Stop trying to manifest. You're actually pushing it away. I know that sounds crazy. You've been told to visualize harder, feel stronger, believe more. But what if all that effort is the exact reason nothing is changing? What if the moment you stop chasing is the moment everything starts moving? Here's the truth most people miss. Manifestation doesn't come from trying to get something. It comes from remembering it's already yours. And right now, you're stuck in a loop wanting, waiting, doubting, without even realizing it. But today, that ends. Because once you understand this shift, you won't need to manifest ever again. You'll simply step into what's already done. You think you're manifesting, but what if you're actually delaying it without even realizing it? Every time you say, I'm trying to manifest this, you place your desire somewhere in the future. You create distance between you and what you want. It sounds harmless, even positive, but your mind doesn't hear motivation. It hears lack. It hears, I don't have it yet. And once that message is accepted, your entire reality begins to organize itself around that idea. You start noticing more reasons why it's not here yet. You become more aware of time passing. You begin to check for results, measure progress, compare yourself to others, and slowly frustration builds. Not because manifestation doesn't work, but because you're unknowingly holding it away. The real shift happens when you stop trying to get something and start living from the assumption that it's already yours. That's where everything changes. Because manifestation was never about attracting something from outside, it was always about aligning with a version of you that already has it. Think about how you behave with things you already own. You don't wake up every day hoping your phone is still yours. You don't visualize having it. You don't question if it will come. There's no emotional struggle attached to it. There's just quiet certainty. That's the energy most people miss. They think intensity brings results, but in reality, it's the absence of resistance that allows things to flow. And resistance comes from trying too hard, from needing it too much, from constantly reminding yourself that it hasn't happened yet. When you're always in that state of almost, life keeps giving you more almost. Opportunities come close but don't land. Signs appear but don't turn into results. It feels like you're on the edge but never crossing it. That's not coincidence. That's alignment with delay. But the moment you shift your internal state from, I'm trying to manifest this, to this is already mine, you collapse that distance. You stop chasing and you start embodying. Your thoughts become different. Your reactions change. Your energy settles. You no longer feel desperate or impatient. Instead, there's a calm confidence, a subtle knowing that doesn't need proof. And that's when things begin to move in ways you can't explain. Because you're no longer pushing your desire away with effort, you're allowing it in with certainty. This is why some people seem to get things effortlessly. It's not luck. It's not magic. It's alignment. They're not focused on getting, they're focused on being the person who already has it. And when you operate from that place, life responds differently. People treat you differently. Opportunities show up more naturally. Even your decisions become clearer because they're no longer driven by fear or lack. So if you've been working hard to manifest, constantly thinking about it, trying different techniques, wondering why it's not happening yet, this might be the reason. You're not doing it wrong. You're just doing too much from the wrong state. You're trying to force what only comes through acceptance. And the moment you understand that, everything simplifies. You don't need more effort. You need a different identity, one that doesn't wait, one that doesn't chase, one that knows. Because manifestation isn't about becoming someone who gets what they want. It's about realizing you're already the version of you who has it. Wanting feels natural. It feels powerful. It feels like the beginning of everything. But here's the part no one tells you. Wanting is actually a signal of lack. The moment you say, I want this, you're quietly confirming, I don't have this. And your mind locks onto that message instantly. It doesn't interpret your words as ambition. It reads them as your current reality. So instead of moving you closer, that feeling of wanting keeps you stuck in a loop where the desire always stays just out of reach. Think about it carefully. Do you want the things you already have in your life? Do you wake up and say, I want my name, or I want my home, or I want the things that are already mine? No, because there's no emotional charge around them. There's no longing. There's no gap. They just exist as part of your identity. That's the difference. Wanting creates a gap. Having removes it. And manifestation doesn't happen in the gap. It happens when the gap disappears. Most people live in that space of wanting for years. They want money, want success, want love, want freedom. And the more they repeat that feeling, the deeper it gets wired into their identity. It becomes who they are, someone who is always wanting, always waiting, always hoping. And life responds perfectly to that identity. It gives them more things to want, more situations that remind them of what's missing, more delays that reinforce the feeling of not yet. That's why it feels like you're doing everything right, but nothing is changing. Because your dominant state is still lack, even if your intentions are positive. The shift happens when you stop feeding that feeling of wanting and start stepping into the feeling of having. And here's the key: having doesn't feel intense. It doesn't feel desperate. It doesn't feel like excitement or obsession. It feels calm. It feels normal. It feels certain. That's why most people miss it. They think manifestation should feel like constant high energy, like pushing, like trying harder. But the truth is, the closer you get to the right state, the more relaxed you become. There's no urgency, because there's nothing to chase. When you truly feel like something is already yours, you don't think about it all day. You don't check for it. You don't question it. You simply live from it. And that subtle shift changes everything. Your thoughts become aligned. Your actions become natural. You stop making decisions from fear or lack and start responding from confidence. Even the way you speak, move, and react begins to reflect someone who already has what they once wanted. And life starts mirroring that back to you. Opportunities appear differently. People respond to you differently. Situations unfold in ways that feel almost effortless. Not because you forced them, but because you stopped resisting them. This is why letting go of wanting is so powerful. It doesn't mean you lose your desire. It means you change your relationship with it. You stop placing it on a pedestal. You stop seeing it as something distant. Instead, you bring it into your identity. You make it familiar. You make it normal. And once something feels normal to you, it stops being out of reach. So if you've been stuck in a cycle of wanting, hoping, and waiting, this is your signal. Not to want more, but to shift into having. Because the moment you stop saying, I want this, and start feeling, this is already mine, you break the cycle of lack. And that's when things finally begin to move. Your mind doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is consistently imagined, and that single truth changes everything. Think about it. Your heart can race from a thought alone. You can feel anxious about something that hasn't happened, or happy just by remembering a moment. Your body reacts, your emotions respond, your entire system shifts, all without anything physically changing. That means your inner world is not just influencing your reality, it's training your reality. And here's where most people get stuck. They use their imagination, but they use it from the wrong identity. They picture what they want, but deep down, they still feel like someone who doesn't have it. So even while visualizing success, they're silently reinforcing absence. They imagine the dream, then return to doubt. They feel inspired for a moment, then go back to checking, worrying, and waiting. And the mind picks up on the dominant signal, not the temporary one. It follows the state you live in the most. That's why nothing changes. Not because visualization doesn't work, but because it's being used as a tool of escape instead of identity. The real shift happens when you stop imagining as a way to get there and start imagining as a way to be there. There's a huge difference. When you imagine from lack, you're visiting a future that feels distant. When you imagine from identity, you're stepping into a reality that feels present. And your mind responds completely differently to that. It begins to accept it as normal. It starts building patterns around it. Your thoughts align with it, your emotions settle into it, and your behavior slowly adjusts to match it. You don't have to force anything. It becomes natural. This is why repetition matters, not repetition of effort, but repetition of identity. The more you return to the feeling of already having it, the more your mind accepts it as truth. And once your mind accepts something as truth, your external world has no choice but to reflect it over time. But here's the trap. Most people keep reminding themselves of what's missing. They wake up and immediately think about what hasn't happened yet. They talk about it, worry about it, check for it. So even if they spend a few minutes visualizing something positive, the rest of their day is spent reinforcing the opposite. And the mind doesn't average those states, it follows the strongest one. So if your dominant feeling is still, it's not here yet, that's the reality you stay in. This is why you have to become aware of what you're consistently feeding your mind, because it doesn't filter truth from imagination, it simply accepts what you repeat with emotion and belief. And once you understand that, you realize you've had the power all along. You don't need to wait for something outside to change first. You can shift your internal state now. You can begin thinking, feeling, and responding as the version of you who already has it. And the more you do that, the less resistance you create. Doubt fades. Urgency disappears. You stop reacting to your current reality as if it's final and start seeing it as temporary. That calm certainty begins to take over. And slowly, things begin to align, opportunities show up, ideas come naturally. Actions feel guided instead of forced. Not because you controlled everything, but because your mind started working with you instead of against you. So if your mind doesn't know the difference, the question is simple. What are you teaching it every day? Are you teaching it lack, delay, and doubt? Or are you training it to accept a new identity, one where it's already done? Because whatever you consistently impress upon your mind, your life will eventually reflect. Let's be honest, control feels safe. It feels like if you just think harder, plan better, push more, you can force life to give you what you want. But here's the truth most people resist. Control is not power. It's fear wearing a mask. It's the quiet belief that if you don't manage every detail, things will fall apart. So you overthink. You replay scenarios, you try to predict outcomes, and without realizing it, you tighten your grip so much that nothing can flow. Because manifestation or any real change doesn't come through force. It comes through alignment, and alignment requires space. Think about it like this. The more you try to control how something happens, the more you limit the ways it can happen. You box it into your own logic, your own timeline, your own expectations. And when reality doesn't match that exact plan, you feel frustrated, confused, even hopeless. Not because it's not working, but because you're trying to control a process that was never meant to be controlled. Real power is the opposite. It's the ability to decide what you want, feel it as already done, and then release the need to figure out every step in between. That release is where everything shifts. Because when you let go of control, you stop interfering. You stop sending mixed signals of doubt and urgency. You stop checking, forcing, chasing. And in that space, things begin to organize themselves in ways you couldn't have planned. This is why some of the biggest breakthroughs in life happen when people stop trying so hard, when they give up the struggle, when they say, you know what, I trust it. And suddenly, opportunities appear. People show up, situations align. It feels almost unreal, but it's not magic. It's what happens when resistance is removed. And control is one of the biggest forms of resistance there is. Because control says, I don't trust this to happen unless I force it. While letting go says, I trust it's already unfolding. And those are two completely different energies. One blocks, one allows. But here's the important part. Letting go doesn't mean doing nothing. It doesn't mean becoming passive or careless. It means you still take action, but your action comes from confidence, not fear. You move forward because it feels natural, not because you're trying to fix something. You make decisions without second-guessing every step. There's a calmness behind what you do, because you're not attached to controlling every outcome. And that calmness changes everything. It changes how you show up. It changes how others respond to you. It even changes the kind of opportunities you notice. Because when your mind is no longer crowded with what if this goes wrong, it becomes open to what if this goes right. And that shift alone creates new possibilities. Most people never experience this because they're addicted to control. They think if they relax, they'll lose progress. But in reality, they're stuck because they won't relax. They're stuck in tension, in urgency, in constant effort, and that keeps reinforcing the same results. So if you've been trying to make things happen, trying to control every detail, trying to push your way forward, this is your sign to shift. Not by doing more, but by releasing more, by trusting more, by allowing more, because the real power isn't in controlling life, it's in aligning with it. And the moment you truly let go, you'll realize something powerful. Things don't fall apart, they fall into place. Act like it's already yours. Doesn't mean pretending or faking something. You don't feel it means shifting your inner state so deeply that your behavior naturally reflects the version of you who already has it. Most people misunderstand this. They think it's about external actions, buying things they can't afford, forcing confidence, acting as if in a way that feels unnatural. But that's not alignment. That's performance. And performance always cracks under pressure. Real change starts internally. It starts with a simple question: if this was already done, who would I be right now? Not later, not when it shows up, right now. How would you think when you wake up? What would your inner dialogue sound like? Would you still doubt, still compare, still check for signs? Or would there be a quiet certainty, a calm confidence that doesn't need validation? That's the state you're stepping into, because your external life is always catching up to your internal identity. If you keep identifying as someone who is waiting, you'll keep experiencing waiting. But the moment you begin to identify as someone who already has it, your entire perspective shifts. You stop reacting from lack. You stop making decisions from fear. You stop settling for less just because you're unsure. Instead, your choices begin to reflect someone who knows their worth, someone who expects things to work out. And that shift, even if it's subtle, starts changing your reality in ways you can't immediately see. This is why acting from the end is so powerful. It removes the gap between where you are and where you want to be. You're no longer trying to get there. You're living from there. And when you live from that place consistently, it becomes your new normal. Think about how you carry yourself when you feel confident versus when you feel uncertain. Your posture changes. Your tone changes. The way you speak, the way you respond, the way you handle situations, it all shifts. Now imagine embodying that version of yourself all the time, not because you're forcing it, but because it feels true to you. That's alignment. And alignment doesn't require effort, it requires consistency. Small, repeated moments where you choose to think, feel, and respond as the version of you who already has it. And over time, those moments compound. They rewire your habits, your reactions, your beliefs. You stop questioning your path and start trusting it. You stop chasing outcomes and start attracting them naturally. But here's the key: you don't wait for external proof before you shift. If you wait for reality to change first, you'll stay stuck in the same cycle, because reality only reflects what you already believe. So the change has to happen within you first. You have to move before you see results, not blindly, but with quiet certainty, with the understanding that what you're embodying internally is already shaping what's coming externally. This is why some people seem to get lucky. They're not forcing outcomes. They're aligned with them. They expect things to work out, so they move differently. They take opportunities without hesitation. They don't overthink every step, and that energy creates momentum. So if you've been waiting for something to show up before you fully step into your power, this is your shift. Stop waiting. Start becoming. Start thinking like it's already yours. Start feeling like it's already yours. Start moving like it's already yours. Not in a loud, forced way, but in a calm, grounded, certain way. Because the moment your identity changes, Your reality has no choice but to follow.